She joins us live in the studio. Alyssa, this really is the calm before the storm.
Not again. No. Oh.
You know, we're going to go ahead and go to break.
Well, we all know what happened the last time we listened to big corporations tell us what was healthy for us. Stillbirths are up, fertility is down, and the people are dropping dead. Of course, we know that it's not due to the vaccine because corporations would never be dishonest, would they? Of course, we're going to be talking about the big lie that's behind all of these corporate deceptions that are actually leading towards our downfall and our death. My guest today is David Wolf. He's an author, nutritionist, and organic farmer. Welcome to Slightly Offensive for the first time.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. We're going to have a good time. We're going to get into it. No punches are going to be held back. I'll tell you that.
No, absolutely not. Because, dude, let's just be straight up here. The consequences of these lies by big pharma, by big food, big agriculture, and also in coalesce with social media censorship and the government are not just pissing off social media influencers who are losing money by being demonetized, or pissing off your old aunt from your old aunt or your drunk uncle because they're getting put in Twitter or Facebook jail. People are dying. How did we get here, man? How did we get to this point to where the consequence is literally death?
It's been a long road. Now, I grew up as a son of two medical doctors. I grew up in the medical profession. My dad has known Dr. Fauci for over 50 years. I've known what a crook that guy is since at least 1990 when I met Dr. Peter Duesberg. He came and spoke at our school. Duesberg was famous for proving that HIV couldn't be the causative single element in the AIDS crisis, whereas Fauci and the other crew were like, nope, it's the only thing that causes AIDS, and we're going to run with our drugs like AZT. He was killing people with AZT back then. He's been killing people ever since with whatever is being pushed by Big Pharma. Big Pharma is weaponized against us, has been for decades, and we've got to change course.
Yeah. Okay. So it's funny you bring that up because I don't know if you saw this, but the lies never, and they never stop. Remember, if you're an audio-only listener of the show, this is audio-only. I call you a blind viewer because you are making those pictures in your head and you are following along. Don't forget to download on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Audible, wherever you can get your downloads. You can get the show and you can have it in your pocket at all times. It really helps us out a lot as we are demonetized everywhere because topics like this are not popular. But David, it's true. They're not learning. In the midst of all of the fact that we know that there's a Wuhan lab, that the Wuhan lab studied novel coronaviruses and gain-of-function research. That's where the gain-of-function research novel coronavirus started. They're still releasing data saying there's links to COVID-19 origins from a raccoon dog at the Wuhan market. How are they so blatant like this with their lies? How have they been so emboldened to continue to deceive and to latch on to intentional misinformation like this? Because at this point, I feel like we're being mocked.
We're being mocked. You got it exactly. These people have so much control. They have so much power. They have so much money that they feel that they're unbeatable. So they're literally mocking us. One of the main things that they feel they have control of is the historical narrative, right? That it's going to be written in the way they say, oh, it was actually a raccoon dog, and when it's all said and done. So we have to overturn them on every facet of every piece of this. The historical narrative they're trying to drive in, the fake science they're trying to drive in. The Wuhan lab had nothing to do with it. It was actually from the wet market. Dr. Fauci has nothing to do with gain of function research and never promoted it. They're going to try to drive that into the history books the way they drove in the 9/11 lies and all the other lies that preceded it. Every single war in the last 100 years has been created by a false flag. Even Pearl Harbor, the government knew, the U.S. government knew it was coming. And that's a fact. And that's a known fact. They still run with their fake narrative.
Okay, so let's jump into this because this topic, as we're going to be answering for you guys who are watching for the first time, we're going to start with a bigger question and a bigger picture, and then we're going to go down the rabbit hole, and we're going to be talking about lowering testosterone levels, lowering sperm count, fertility, the effect of food on the body, the pushing of poison, and the way that these corporations are slowly killing us, as we'll probably find out from a recent experiment that's been placed upon the world population, how many more people will die. But on that note, welcome back to Slightly Offensive. This is the best, worst show on the internet. My name is Elijah Schaefer, and if you're just tuning in, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor today. You know there's a war on men. I mean, it's in our bodies, right? Our sperm count is down by over 30% in the last several decades. Testosterone is dropping by 1% every year, meaning that a 60-year-old today literally has 17 to 30% less testosterone and sperm count than even a 60-year-old back in 1987. It's not okay. My friends at blackforestsupplements.com/slightly have a perfect solution for you, and they cut out the bullshit. Number one, you can't excuse an unhealthy life. You've got to be lifting weights. You need to get good rest. You've got to get sunlight. The reason why people like Andrew Tate are popular is because he tells it like it is. You've got to work out. You've got to work hard. You're a man. Most importantly, if you feel like you've been tired, if you feel like you don't have your edge, you might be suffering from lower testosterone and need testosterone boosting supplement Turkesterone from blackforestsupplements.com/slightly. You can get 10% off right now. To kind of describe it to you, it's basically steroids without all the nasty stuff and disgusting side effects. And it's hormone free, but it can boost your muscle mass, give you the energy you want, and help you reach your health goals. Go to blackforestsupplements.com/slightly. That's blackforestsupplements.com/SUPPLEMENTS.com/SLIGHTLY. That's blackforestsupplements.com/slightly for 10% off Turkesterone to add to your healthy regimen and to get started today. All right, David, I'm sure you're familiar with this image. I'm sure you've seen this 1,000,001 times. And this is a map of all of the food companies that are connected in some sort of a spiderweb chart, tracing back to the same several corporations: PepsiCo, Nestle, Coca-Cola, Mars, Kellogg's, etc. And what does this graph mean? What does this chart mean to the reality that we're facing when it comes to approaching our health as people and trying to understand how to actually fight against these people in the real world?
It means a lot about the same as what's going on in media, that the media is all owned by like 6 companies. You see the same with the food industry. And that means that the power is in the hands of the few. Now, I started out as a kid reading Paul Stitt's books. He wrote a book called Battling the Food Giants. Back then, it seemed like these forces, these, I think, 8 companies you showed here, were so formidable. They were unbeatable. But the fact of the internet and the creation of the possibility of getting the word out was something they didn't factor in. It's kind of like social media and what happened with the pandemic, the way they were able to, try to censor people, but the word got out there and people found out what was going on. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to centralize the control of power and then cut corners. That's, just business. At that level. Let's see if we can do it cheaper. Let's see if we can use genetically modified ingredients. Let's see if we can cut a corner here or there. Let's see if we can use more chemicals and save us more money there. That's one perspective on it, and that's definitely going on. There's also a deeper perspective that at the highest levels of these corporations, both media and food and government, of course, and military industrial complex, that these people are actually in bed with the devil. There's no question about it. They are very deeply disturbed in their religious and spiritual beliefs. I'll just say that. Let's see if we can address it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to address that, and I want to start this conversation. You mentioned this earlier, but let's go back to starting with HIV. Okay. So, in a fundamental understanding that you have, like, what is HIV and how did the pandemic of HIV, which, develops, people know that develops into AIDS, right? This is an infection. You can develop AIDS. How did this come to happen in terms of what we were told as a society?
Okay, that's a deep question. So let's go right down the rabbit hole. I met Dr. Peter Duesberg in 1990. I spent the entire day with him. He came and spoke at our school when I was going to school in Santa Barbara. He laid out the whole idea that HIV could not be the only causative agent in the AIDS syndrome. AIDS is a syndrome. It's an acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So it's a series of problems. It's a series of immunological problems, and it can't be just correlated to one thing. The one thing that's being the problem and the one thing we have to beat is just oversimplistic scientism, and they use the veneer of science to trick people. There's nothing ever superficially explained. Oh, it's like, oh, here's the bad guy. This is what's causing it all. It's so silly. When you look at the behavior of what causes the AIDS syndrome, you could see it's the gay sex. You could see that these people, and there was 3 different areas, and I think it was, I want to say Houston, I want to say San Francisco, and I want to say New York, where gay people were injected with drugs that were government drugs and that were experimental drugs that could have given them these acquired immune deficiency syndromes. That part's been left out of the historical narrative, that this stuff could have been all kicked off. The whole scare could have been kicked off by pharma itself. Then you've got a gatekeeper like Dr. Fauci in there who makes sure that no natural cures ever make the press, that makes sure no natural cures ever are allowed out. So he holds that line of there's only the high tech cure, there's only the high ticket cure, the big money cure, right? It's going to be the vaccine, or AZT in the case of AIDS, which AZT killed numerous people I know, and a very good friend of mine's brother was killed by AZT. AZT is very deadly. And the whole story is a racket. It's a mafia racket to make money, but there is no cure in it. Of course, pharma's not trying for any cure. They're just trying to play with symptoms, push symptoms back, maybe bring symptoms up, or to injure people enough where they're hooked on their drugs consistently. Got a monopoly on this racket, pretty much. They've got all the doctors trained in their system of Rockefeller cut, burn, poison, inject theory. I know that. I grew up as both my parents are medical doctors. I know what they were trained with. They weren't trained in natural medicine. They weren't trained in nutrition. They weren't trained in acupuncture. They weren't trained in all of the hundreds of different things that could be used and are used for healing that don't fit into Big Pharma's business model.